The sun had barely risen over the African savannah, painting the endless landscape in shades of gold and crimson, when the rangers set out on their morning patrol. The air was thick with the scent of dry grass and the faint, distant musk of wild animals stirring to life. The sky, clear and wide, promised another scorching day, and yet there was a tension in the air that felt almost tangible, as though the land itself was holding its breath. The rangers, hardened by years of navigating this vast wilderness, had seen countless scenes of life and death, yet nothing could have prepared them for what lay ahead. Their vehicle rumbled slowly over the cracked, dusty terrain, the tires crunching against the hardened earth. Birds scattered in every direction at their approach, and the distant roar of a lion echoed across the plains, a reminder that this was a land ruled by strength and ferocity. But today, the sound that drew their attention was different, piercing, desperate, filled with pain. It was a cry that carried across the plains, cutting through the usual morning sounds like a blade. The rangers exchanged uneasy glances, instinctively knowing that something was terribly wrong. Guided by the anguished cries, they followed the trail across the golden expanse, the tall grass swaying with every cautious step of the unseen creature. Every so often, the grass would part just slightly, revealing a glimpse of movement, a flash of tawny fur. And then, as they rounded a small rise, they saw her, lying there, struggling against the unforgiving land, her body marred by dozens of long, sharp porcupine quills. Some had lodged themselves dangerously close to her eyes. Others protruded from her powerful legs and shoulders, creating a terrifying lattice of pain. She was magnificent, even in her suffering. Her golden coat, usually radiant under the African sun, was matted with blood and dirt, and her muscles, once coiled with strength, twitched uncontrollably with pain. The lioness, queen of her domain, the apex predator whose roar commanded silence across the savannah, was brought low. The sight was shocking in its intensity. Rangers had seen injured animals before, but rarely did they witness the ferocity of life itself being so painfully humbled. She looked at them with eyes that burned amber, filled with fear, pain, and a fierce, undying defiance. The rangers moved carefully, knowing that one wrong step could provoke the creature to lash out. Yet, despite the danger, a sense of compassion and responsibility drove them forward. This was not just any lioness. This was a symbol of the wild itself, a creature whose survival meant more than just her own life. It represented the delicate balance of the ecosystem she ruled. They could not leave her to die alone, pierced and vulnerable in the unforgiving savannah. The scene was almost surreal. Quills jutted from her thick muscular frame at awkward angles, some appearing to penetrate deep into her flesh. Her breathing was labored, each inhale and exhale accompanied by a low, guttural growl that was both a warning and a plea. The rangers could see the strain in her powerful limbs, the way she tried to rise only to collapse again, her strength fading with each attempt. Even from a distance, the pain she endured was almost unbearable to witness. Yet, despite it all, there was a regal quality to her suffering, a stubborn determination that mirrored the wild itself, refusing to yield even when faced with overwhelming odds. The rangers paused, assessing the situation. They knew they had to act quickly, but the first step was always observation. They scanned the surrounding area for signs of the porcupine or any other potential threats. In the wilderness, every injury had a story, and they needed to understand hers. Porcupines were notorious for their sharp quills, which could easily incapacitate even the strongest of predators if struck at close range. It was likely that she had encountered one while hunting or exploring her territory, misjudging her attack, and paying the price. The quills, while not immediately lethal, posed serious risks. They could puncture vital organs, become infected, and ultimately lead to death if left untreated. As the rangers slowly approached, the lioness' gaze followed them, unblinking, calculating. Even in her weakened state, she remained a predator, aware of the potential threat these humans posed. Her ears flicked, her tail twitched, and a low growl rumbled in her throat. It was a sound that conveyed both defiance and fear. The rangers knew that proximity would only intensify her stress, and yet, staying too far away could mean missing the narrow window to save her life. They exchanged silent nods, a mutual understanding passing between them. Careful, deliberate movements, every step measured. One of the rangers slowly lowered a small branch to the ground, attempting to gauge her reaction. The lioness flinched but did not attack, her body tensing in readiness. It was a delicate balance. They needed to gain her trust without provoking her instincts. They began speaking softly, the gentle tones barely audible over the dry wind, a language not of words but of calm intent. Slowly, the tension in the air began to shift, just enough to allow them to close the distance. Closer now, they could see the details of her injuries. The quills had embedded themselves at various angles, some twisted and lodged deep, others shallow but numerous enough to cover large portions of her body. Tiny streams of blood ran along the grooves of her fur, mixing with the dust and sweat of the morning. The sheer number of quills was staggering, a testament to the ferocity of her encounter. How she had survived this long without succumbing to shock was a marvel in itself. Her eyes, those brilliant amber orbs, held a flicker of hope or perhaps recognition of the humans who had come to aid her. The rangers worked in silence, their minds focused entirely on the task ahead. They could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on them like the African sun overhead. Every second counted. The longer she remained injured, the greater the risk of infection or fatal weakness. They gathered their equipment, checking tranquilizers, medical kits, and tools for removing the quills. Every move was calculated. They knew that a misstep could provoke the lioness, turning a rescue mission into a dangerous encounter. As they prepared, the wind carried the distant sounds of the savannah waking. Birds called from the trees, insects buzzed over the dry soil, and the faint roar of another lion echoed across the plains. Yet here, in this small clearing, time seemed to slow. The world narrowed to the space between the lioness and the humans, a silent battlefield where strength, patience, and courage would decide her fate. The rangers could see the pain etched into every line of her body, the way her muscles twitched involuntarily, the subtle shiver that ran through her frame with every gust of wind. One ranger spoke quietly, a single word of reassurance, more to himself than to the lioness. Step by step they approached, careful to avoid sudden movements. The lioness's growl softened slightly, though her body remained taut with tension. She was wary but not entirely defensive, an acknowledgement perhaps that these humans were not here to harm her. It was a fragile trust, one built on the shared understanding that survival sometimes required alliances, even unexpected ones. They stopped a few meters away, allowing her to settle slightly, watching for signs of agitation. The rangers could feel their own hearts pounding in their chests, a mix of adrenaline and awe. They had faced dangerous situations before, but there was something uniquely humbling about witnessing the raw vulnerability of such a powerful predator. In her pain, there was majesty. In her struggle, there was resilience. Every quill embedded in her flesh was a reminder of the brutal realities of life in the wild. As they assessed the lioness' condition, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the clearing. The golden light highlighted every detail. The shine of her fur, the stark contrast of the dark quills, the taut muscles